we said that we were going to talk about disclosing, if you like.
Or coming out, as some people would
coming
call
out.
it.
And we might start by doing that ourselves.
It's a good idea. Yes, indeed. Yeah. So I'm Eoin Stevens, and I'm autistic. And yeah, I discovered that just a bit over 10 years, no, nearly 11 years now, I suppose. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and I'm a therapist and a trainer based in Ireland, and working mostly with autistic clients and some ADHD clients these days. And working with Vauna in the training area, as well as doing some other training work. And I suppose, we're talking about disclosing, and we're disclosing here, as in we're not just therapists. We're working with autistic people. We're autistic and neurodivergent, but we also would have our own disclosure stories. I'm thinking, I'm not saying we'll necessarily throw them in today, but you never know. We might throw in bits of them, because that's what we're going to talk about, is clients' experience and concerns around disclosing. And yeah, I mean, when I think back to 11 years ago, I had my own, or whatever, 10 years ago, I had my own disclosure experiences, and they were mixed. That's the reality. They were mixed.
When you say mixed,
well, like, it's one of the things that I taught, work through with clients, is like, when I, like, the people I told first were my siblings, and my parents had both passed away by then, and eventually told various friends and some colleagues, and I kind of came out to the profession, 5 or 6 years ago. But whatever reaction I got made me think, what reaction did I want? And that's one of the things I talk to clients about.
Yeah.
So, I said, well, what maybe are you hoping for? Because I just didn't get as much reaction as I wanted. I think that was the simple starting point. Whatever about then the nature of the reaction, it was just a bit of a big thing for me, and then kind of fell a little bit flat, to be honest, which didn't feel great. I would have liked simply just more response. And I'm jumping ahead to some of the stuff I talk to clients about, but to be honest, I think after years of processing this through with clients, I think, and I've seen other people talk about this online as well, I think one of the main things we want is curiosity. We don't necessarily need people to understand, but we want them to be interested.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's disappointing if they aren't,
Yeah, because it's not a medical diagnosis. This is about a person's identity. This is about who I am. I'm letting you know a little bit more about who I actually am, so that you can know me better, so that you can relate with me in a more fulfilling and rich way.
Exactly.
And it's relevant, and I want you to be curious about that. I want you to care about it.
I mean, the analogy I often use with clients, and I often say, look, if you're advocating for yourself with other people around this, and you want to tell them what you need, then an interesting comparison is something like telling somebody that you've discovered you have celiac disease. So you've problems with gluten and with wheat and things like that. Then what you would hope for, and what you, I think, would largely get, would be curiosity. You'd get, oh, really? Oh, what does that mean? And how does that affect you? And what does that now mean for changes in your life? And is that difficult? And if so, in what way? And what are the implications for me if I'm to feed you? If you're coming to my house for dinner, then what will I need to know? What can I do and what can I not do? And if I feed you the wrong thing, like, will something terrible happen, or will you just feel a bit unwell? It'll be all sorts of curiosity and implications. And that's a lot of people don't get that when they disclose that they're autistic. What they do get, maybe we can talk a bit about some of these common examples, but they often don't get that. And so I say, well, look, if you want to advocate for yourself, say I want curiosity, like you would give me if I told you I was celiac, explain it to people. And some people then will say, yes, okay, I see what you mean. Some people will just be defensive, obviously, but and scared of the whole territory or whatever. But what about yourself? Do you want to, before we move on to talking a bit more about clients, do you want to say a bit about what
Yeah,
your
I can do.
experience
Yes.
was? Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm a psychotherapist and coach working with neurodivergent clients, actually, which I've been doing for a couple of decades. And I decided to declare that I was autistic on my website. Actually, is one of the first places that I said it. In fact, not really at the time thinking through whether people would or wouldn't see that, that might know me, because I'm just thinking of little old anonymous me, just put it on my website, and who's going to be looking at that? Probably not my family. And then I actually did have a conversation with my brother about it, and it went really well. He was actually very interested, and we talked a lot about it. And then with friends, it's been some mixed reaction, actually. Some people have said, oh, well, yeah, I've got neurodivergent friends. Yeah, no surprise whatsoever. With other people, it's like making assumptions, so, not great things either. I can't think of any specific things necessarily, but making like one person actually did say to me something, a friend of a friend, as a matter of fact, just said, oh, but you're really nice, actually, and I thought, oh, what does that mean?
Yeah. Or people say, but you're really friendly, or you're really sociable, or you have friends, or things like that, as if those things are impossible, if that's as if that's what being autistic means, and I suppose that brings us into that territory that, and again, with clients, I would sort of, maybe if they're thinking about and exploring now I think might tell some friends or family or whoever, I do kind of alert them to some of those possible reactions, like another classic one is, I never would have known. But like, again, when you think about it, it's a bit like somebody telling a friend, by the way, I just wanted to tell you I'm gay. And the person saying, I never would have known. Well, like, yeah, why would you, why would you, why is that even an issue that you wouldn't have known? Did you think it should have shown in some way? People do think it should have shown in some way. They think if you're autistic, you should be something terribly obvious, like Rain Man, and you're not that. So that's their immediate reaction, But from our point of view, that's a very strange reaction, and a very uncomfortable reaction, and a very off-putting reaction. Yeah. I mean, look, we kind of, maybe we have to allow for the lack of knowledge that's there, I mean, what we didn't know 15 years ago, or 20 years ago, but still, it's unfortunate,
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I'm just remembering another reaction, actually, that I had only last week, as a matter of fact. It was by I won't say who the person is, but somebody that I interact with in the course of my life, not particularly a friend, not a client, not a work colleague, just somebody, and they were talking about something or other. I was talking about something or other, and then it said, yeah, well, it's because I'm autistic myself, I said. And they said, oh, right, okay, well, yeah, well, everyone's a bit autistic, aren't
that's
they?
the other big one, isn't it? Yeah.
And so I said, well, they're not actually, but I take your point that you've perhaps not known much about it before. And I was prepared to let the conversation go at that point. And then the person chit-chatted a bit about it, and it turns out that this person has got a child who is an autistic child. And that leads us into the other thing, doesn't it? That because it's genetic, maybe for some people, they don't see that as being something that is unusual, so there's a chance that there's autistic traits or autism in that person themselves, and they think it's only in their child. And that's why they feel like, well, everyone's a bit autistic because I've got some of those traits as well.
Yeah, that's right. That's interesting. Yeah. And it brings me back to the family piece. If it's family that we're telling, if us, our clients, or whoever, then of course part of the implication in our heads, because we've had time to think about this, like
Yeah.
when I told my family, or when clients are telling their parents or their siblings or whoever, their even extended family if they're close to them. In our heads, we're already up to date with the implications of that. We've already thought a bit about, and who else in our family might be, given that I know it's, huge genetic component. So yeah, what sense would that make even of some of the other people in my family and the relationships I have with them or whatever? But they haven't been thinking about it in most cases. Maybe they have. You might get a surprise, but that's another kind of potentially potentially messy piece that it's useful for us just to alert clients to. And like the potential reactions are lack of interest again, sort of, well, they're not interested in thinking about the family, any more than they are about you. They, literally not interested, even though underneath that there might be lots going on. A more sort of obviously negative reaction, which is more a defensiveness, which could be behind the lack of interest as well, of course, but sometimes there can be real out and out defensiveness and anger. It's almost like, how dare you be stirring that pot up or making those accusations, And then, of course, there is potentially, sometimes even after defensive reactions, there is a potential for family to start looking at it, and getting curious. And, so again, I like to alert clients to that as well, is that the initial reactions aren't always the long-term reactions, but it's tough enough territory to negotiate your way through for some people.
Absolutely, yeah. When you think about identifying it yourself, or anybody recognizing that they're an autistic person that hasn't known as a child, then of course you don't just wake up one day and you get that in one sentence, in one paragraph, in one conversation, or one thing that you've read. It's something that, it's an awareness that builds up over time, that you've considered and reflected on, and the people that you then might want to disclose to have to be afforded the same amount of time and things to reflect back on as well. So someone could have either a non-reaction, seemingly disinterest, or they might have what might be an overreaction, and that's their first reaction, that these things can be talked about over time instead of in one conversation.
I mean, I have a few clients who, have come to me to explore the possibility or likelihood that they are autistic because one of their adult children has identified as autistic and has said to them, Dad or Mom, I think you're probably another autistic one, I think it's your side of the family kind of. And, their initial reaction might have been just, that's too much for me to think about, or defensive, or even a bit uninterested or whatever. But they've ended up actually then, thinking, over time, read a little bit about it, whatever, and they're coming actually exploring it. So, it's not that, we're not being entirely negative about it here. We're not saying this doesn't go well. We're just saying it might not, at least initially. So it's good to alert clients to the possibilities. But then it can, I think that, part of the focus of the future isn't just the actual much larger number of autistic adults in the world than we thought there were, but as well as children. But I think the focus of the future in a way is on autistic families, on that phenomenon, that there are families where a number of people are autistic. And that's a kind of a phenomenon in its own right that needs attention and therapist knowledge and political social support and so on. So it's a good thing. This is starting to rattle through families, but it can also be pretty hair-raising. Rachel is saying, I've witnessed the reaction. Does it matter? Yeah, that's a good point, as in, well, so what, kind of, as in big deal almost.
Yeah, and it is significant. It's significant in lots of ways, and that's what you would like to have a conversation about.
Yeah,
that's why you're telling them. Otherwise, you wouldn't bother to say it.
Yeah.
It can be exploring that, can't it, with clients? It's like, let's see if it's worth looking at what you're expecting or what you would want to happen as a result of having this conversation with the people that love you or that know you or that interact with you. I mean, some parents, of course, it's difficult with parents, isn't it? Because they might feel very guilty.
That's another possibility that we see often enough,
Why didn't I know? Or did I do something wrong? Or did I cause it? If they're thinking of it in terms of being an impairment, oh, that's a terrible thing, something terrible that, because we don't know what they think autism is necessarily.
Yeah. I mean, guilt is a tough reaction for the parent to have. It's an unpleasant feeling. They feel like, oh, maybe we should have known, or maybe there were even hints looking back. Maybe a teacher had said something and they'd kind of dismissed it, And, I have had clients who've said, well, I said to my mother, look, I'm glad we're talking about it now, and I love you, and I know you love me, but I do think you should feel a little bit guilty, actually, to be honest with you, and we're just going to have to work that through. I'm not blaming you. Not a lot was known about autism when I was a child, but I wish you'd followed up on what that teacher said, because you're now admitting that something was said. So it's can be quite big stuff for people to work through. But like in the end of it all, a feeling of guilt from a parent is difficult then for both to work through, but it's a more welcome reaction than lack of interest or defensiveness. It's almost like, well, at least you think it matters.
We've got a starting point, haven't we? Something to talk about.
We've got a lever on it now. You're treating it with seriousness, at least, and we can work through that together, but it can be a tough piece, certainly.
And it's also, it's like, well, I've known you from birth, from the parents' point of view. And now you're going to be teaching me more about you. And yet I'm your parent. I was there. I gave birth to you. I cared for you when you were a baby. I know everything about you. But now I'm finding out I don't. Quite a shock. It's quite.
I know, which is, it's like, it does have parallels with the shock for parents of disclosure of sexual preference, orientation or gender identity, of course, can be a similarly massive one for parents. It's just, I just thought I knew you, which is a bit of an assumption on parents' parts for anybody anyway, that think they actually know somebody that well just because they brought them up. But certainly in this case, that can be a difficult, again, a piece to work through sometimes.
And then there's the reaction from siblings as well, isn't there? Because that might be very difficult, and it might put the parents in a very difficult situation, because if I accept that that's the reality for you, then how does that then shed light on all the things that may or may not have happened in our family between you and the siblings? Or
huge. A lot, I think, for families to look at. And I mean, I've been now long enough doing this work intensively with lots of people for a few years now that, I've begun to see some families actually work this through. So I do know now a couple of families where it has reverberated through the family, and a lot of them have taken a look at it, and they've had family talks about it, and a few people have gone and got assessments, and they're beginning to identify as a neurodivergent family in which a number of family members are autistic or have ADHD or both, and it's an extraordinary phenomenon, and it's a complete turnaround for the family as a family unit. It's amazing.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I've had that as well. And I've also had where people have said that they have been accepted as a neurodivergent person, but they're the othered one in the family. It's now there's a lot of things are being put onto that. So, that explains why you were like this, that, and the other at that time back then. And that can be very frustrating and upsetting for clients, can't it? Because to give the family time, and will they ever, will my family ever, sort of want to think it through in a different way, or will they be sort of always saying, oh, that's why you were so argumentative then, or that's why you were so difficult. Is that ever going to shift? Am I going to be like blamed for something?
I mean, it's like I I wanted to say a little bit more about just friends and coming out to friends, but actually it's also just occurred to me they're talking about families that were slightly missing out on disclosure to partners, to spouses.
Yeah.
Because actually that's been a fairly mixed one in my experience, that with clients that again, some of the toughest reactions sometimes have come from partners, because the implications are huge, obviously, for a long-term partner. Again, similar to parents, but I know you, and similar even to a bit of the what the reaction Rachel mentioned, as in, well, so what? As in, what are you making a fuss about this for? It's not you're you, I'm me. That's that. Like, but also a fear of what does that mean, and does it mean a huge amount, and how do I deal with that? But also often enough an initial reaction of no, kind of a you can't be, as in, that doesn't make sense. It's I would know if you were, or no, like that's not what autistic is, and also a kind of suspicion and a threat, as in, like, are you trying to distract or make excuses for things, or is it all going to be about you now, or that kind of thing?
Yeah.
No, because I mean, couples, as we know, are complex entities at the best of times, so that one in itself is nearly, we might just come back to couples in general as an issue another time, but that can be a messy enough one now.
Yeah, because there's also the time where clients will come on and they've been trying to address issues in their marriage or their partnership. And then the other one has said, I think that you're autistic and you need to look into it, or I think you're ADHD and you need to figure out something. And then they've been sent off to then have therapy when they've realized, oh, probably I am. What are the implications behind that? Is there an assumption that the couple are both holding that it's because I am neurodivergent that then that has caused lots of problems in our relationship? And the answer is yes and no. It can be because of miscommunication or things, but not just because one person is something, but that it sheds light on the ways that we relate and the ways that we communicate. That now has relevance for that.
Yeah. And I think that just leaves us coming back a little bit maybe to friends in our last 5 minutes, and maybe another couple of bits and pieces. But the piece around friends that I wanted to mention that comes up, and again, I'm sort of alerting clients a little bit to this, though often they've thought of it already, and that is that disclosing to family has risks, but by and large, whatever happens, they're still your family, usually, unless things go very badly wrong. But the risk with friends is, will it affect the friendship and maybe end the friendship? And that's not a completely unrealistic risk, because that actually can happen. Now, maybe it needs to happen if it happens, because if the friend drifts away from you because you've disclosed you're autistic, that's not a good sign. And maybe then you don't need that friend, but it can still be a huge loss and a huge grief. And the other thing that can happen, of course, is that depending on the friend's reaction, you might begin to think, I'm not sure that I want to stay with this friend, actually, and you might be the one who ends the friendship. But there is more of that risk with friendships anyway. Once you start exploring your real identity and masking less and so on, but even just the reactions to disclosure can be a big influence on the future of a friendship.
Yeah, that's a good point. And it can deepen friendships as well.
Oh, of course it can. I'm only picking on the difficulties, obviously, because that's where you alert the clients to. No, absolutely, it can wonderfully deepen friendships. Yeah.
Because often people would want to be telling their friends, oh, that's why sometimes you don't hear from me for ages, and then I'm contacting you, or that's why I left the nightclub early, because I just got to the point of not being able to tolerate it anymore, even though I was having a great time and I agreed to come. It's not that I want to not tell you anything. I just wanted to go because I'd reached the end of my tolerance, but I didn't want to spoil it for you.
Yeah, nothing personal. Yeah.
And me explaining this to you is important.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, happily lots of this goes well, and increasingly so, because the point of history we're in is very significant. I think like 10 years ago we would have been discussing this very little, because not so many people were realizing they were autistic, and a lot of those people weren't really sharing it with anyone. They were keeping it to themselves for quite a long time. 20 years time, maybe it'll be very normal, ordinary thing to be telling someone, and not a big deal. But right now, it's mixed. It's a mixed experience. Yeah. It's unpredictable. It can be messy. So that's why it's a useful thing to talk about, and to be able to alert clients to and support them through, depending on what reaction they get. Yeah.
And the autistic person who's not known that they were autistic as a child doesn't always know how much they've been masking. And they start to discover that as they're going on from recognizing about being autistic. And the friends might have known them in a certain way, and those things, some of those things might change over time, because as the autistic person recognizes more of what they respond to well and what they don't, and what meets their needs and what they don't, what ways they've done things because that's how it's done, and what are the ways that actually I prefer it a bit like this. Instead of like getting loads of people together on a Friday night, maybe I want to sit with 3 people.
Yeah. But that's another thing about friendships, is which friends are okay with you saying, I'm changing a bit, and I'm going to start saying, actually, I don't really like that, so you go off and do it. When you're doing that other activity, I'll join you. But like the best of friends will be fine with that, but some people won't. So it is that is quite big territory. The other that kind of leads us to masking, by the way, which maybe then we'll talk more about next time. The other bit that we touched on when we were chatting before we switched on Zoom, or before we invited everyone in, was disclosure to your employer, and we kind of said we might not get to that today, and we haven't. And I think it's something we could discuss under workplace issues in a way, because it's kind of separate. It's separate from all the stuff we've just been talking about, which is all personal stuff and people who are in your life personally. So there are issues around that question of, do you disclose at work? But we can maybe come to them under the heading of workplace issues, perhaps.
Because it does come up in therapy.
It does come up in therapy.
And it's relevant.
Yeah. It is, but we'll save that for another time. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you for chatting today.
Thank you. Very interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's always good to talk it out and just get it clear in our heads.
Yeah, thanks for joining us today. If you want to know more about us, you can go to the website, which is all the W's, Vanguard Neurodiversity Training.com. And if you go to the resources page, actually, and sign up, you will always be invited to events and free resources and paid training events. So some are free, some are fee paying. You can unsubscribe at any time by going to the footer of the email and just clicking unsubscribe, and we'll stop sending you stuff. And connect with us on LinkedIn if you'd like to as well.
Great.
So thanks for being here.
Great.
We'll see you
Okay.
next Wednesday.
Thanks, everyone, and hope to see you again. All the best.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
I'll close this chat box. I don't think I can while the recording's on.
No.
So I will turn the recording off, shall I?
Yeah, sure. Whatever. Might as well at this stage. Yeah.